The splendid garden was a villa district, and everyone living here was either wealthy or noble. At this moment, Ginny King was nestled on the sofa with a beautiful lady, both of them drinking. Ginny had a very good relationship with Tiffany Smith, and she shared everything with her. Tiffany was also the one who understood Ginny and Zane the most. Listening to Ginny's complaints, Tiffany sighed slightly in her heart. Her friend here was outstandingly capable, a true career woman, but when it came to emotions, she was a complete idiot. At first, she didn't understand why Ginny would choose someone as ordinary as Zane Soulsby. But as she learned more, she also understood why Ginny fell in love with Zane. It's just that her love was something many men couldn't comprehend. Ding! Storyshots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. Ginny, I think you should have a good talk with him. Tiffany said. Ginny raised her head. What should I talk to him about? Tiffany said, although you've been married for 3 years, he clearly doesn't fully understand your personality. In his view, as long as he can help you, he can do anything. He never thought you would be angry because of Faith Heron, and even less so that you would be so sensitive. But Ginny had calmed down now and knew Tiffany was right. You silly girl, Tiffany extended her fair finger and tapped her forehead. You need to change this personality of yours, otherwise, you will lose Zane one day. Lose him then. I'm beautiful, rich, and pretty, why would I be afraid of not finding another man? Ginny snorted, obviously speaking out of anger. Tiffany understood her, chuckling, yes, my Ginny is rich and pretty, the line of people chasing after my Ginny could stretch from here to France. One Zane, we don't need him. As it happens, I'm a lawyer, tomorrow I'll talk to him about your divorce. Ginny quickly grabbed Tiffany's hand, no need. Seeing her nervous look, Tiffany teased, no need? He has a big beauty like you, yet he's still messing around, getting involved with other women. Why should he? Just wait, I'll call him right now. Ah, no. Ginny hurriedly grabbed her hand, seriously saying, he must be considering me. Let's forgive him this time. Forgive him? Tiffany tilted her head, teasing. Seeing her expression, Ginny knew she had been tricked and angrily gave her a light punch. All right, stop messing around. You told me he kept asking if you went to the company. Has he found out you met with William Mercer? Tiffany's expression became serious. Ginny was stunned, then whispered, no way, would he follow me? Don't forget how he found out you went to the hotel with William Mercer last time. Ginny's face turned pale, tightly grabbing Tiffany's hand. Tiffany, you have to help me, he misunderstood me. Tiffany sighed, you're such an emotional idiot. He asked you like that because he wanted you to tell him yourself. Otherwise, with his decisiveness, he would have divorced you long ago. Ha? What should I do then? All right, you shouldn't stay here with me today, go home and explain things to him properly. He loves you so much, he will definitely understand you. Ginny was hesitant. She had left in a fit of anger, and if she went back without him apologizing, wouldn't he look down on her? How about this, I'll call him and say you drank too much, so he'll worry about you and come to pick you up. Tiffany, understanding her personality, came up with a more reliable idea. Ginny didn't speak, turning her head to the side. Such a tsundere. Tiffany laughed, took out her phone, and called Zane. Soon, the call connected, and music could be heard. Tiffany frowned, Zane, where are you? Zane's voice was a bit slurred, who are you? I'm Ginny's best friend, Tiffany Smith. Where are you? Mr. Soulsby, why are you taking calls while drinking? Tiffany frowned, you're drinking? Where are you drinking? Zane didn't reply, seemingly pondering who Tiffany was. Soon, an electronic voice came from Zane's side, all staff at Galaxy KTV congratulate Mr. Wilson on his birthday. Zane, are you at Galaxy KTV? No one answered her, and the call was hung up. Tiffany's face darkened. She knew exactly what kind of place Galaxy KTV was. It was a famous business KTV, and the hostesses there were exceptionally beautiful. While she was here helping Ginny, he was there enjoying himself. She angrily stood up, pulling Ginny into the car without a word. Tiffany, what's wrong? Tiffany didn't answer, her eyes filled with anger. She had thought Zane was a good person, that her friend had married for love rather than money. Now it seemed she had misjudged him. She was going to take Ginny to catch him in the act. In the private room, the KTV manager Jake Davies was also flushed from drinking. He didn't leave to work but stayed by Zane's side, accompanying him. Zane's eyes were unfocused, and he didn't know how much he had drunk. He just felt his head swelling and his vision blurring. "Stop drinking," April softly said, looking at Zane with some concern in her eyes. Zane looked at her, shook his head, and downed the glass of whiskey in front of him. April sighed. Although Zane hadn't said anything, she had worked here long enough to naturally see that Zane was drinking because of emotional issues. Thud. Zane suddenly fell, his head landing on April's smooth, white thighs. "April, this." Jake Davies didn't know what to do. April said, "It's okay, you can go back to work. I'll stay here and take care of him." "All right," Jake nodded and walked out. He had stayed behind just to drink with Zane. Now that he was drunk, there was no need for him to stay. As he opened the door, he saw two beautiful women. The one on the left, though dressed in casual attire, exuded a noble and aloof aura that indicated she wasn't an ordinary person. The other woman was also very pretty, especially her big, round, black eyes, which seemed to hold endless wisdom. These two people were none other than Ginny and Tiffany. The former had a cold expression, with a look of deep self-mockery in her eyes. The latter's eyes seemed to be blazing with fury. She walked over quickly and pulled Zane up. "Who are you, and what are you doing?" April immediately pulled Zane back, glaring at Tiffany protectively. Tiffany coldly looked at April and said, "How many times has he come to you?" "How many times he comes to me, what's it to you?" April retorted. Tiffany pulled Ginny over and said coldly, "It may have nothing to do with me, but it has everything to do with her. She is Zane Soulsby's wife." April looked at Ginny in surprise. She hadn't expected Zane to have such a beautiful wife. Ginny took a deep breath, looking at the drunken Zane, thinking silently that whatever the issue was, they would discuss it at home. Here, they were just a laughingstock. She was in great pain right now. She never would have dreamed that her man, Zane, would come here seeking a hostess. What an insult! Ginny pulled Zane over and glared at him with her beautiful eyes. "Let's go home. There's alcohol there." Zane, in his daze, lifted his head. Seeing it was Ginny, he was momentarily stunned, then shook his head with a bitter smile. He must have drunk too much to see Ginny here. "Zane!" Tiffany suddenly shouted. Half of Zane's drunkenness was instantly sobered. He looked at Tiffany in surprise, then quickly noticed the sorrow in Ginny's eyes. "Why did you come here?" Zane asked. Tiffany, seeing that Zane was finally a bit sober, sneered, "If we didn't come, we wouldn't know about your two-faced behavior." Zane's brows furrowed. "What do you mean by that?" "What do I mean?" "Zane Soulsby, even at this point, you're still playing dumb?" Tiffany, being a lawyer, had a sharp tongue. "Do you know how much alcohol Ginny drank at my place after you two argued? You didn't come to console her, but instead, you came to this shabby place to find this woman to accompany you. Do you think this is fair to Ginny?" Zane's face darkened. "Tiffany Smith, watch your mouth. Oh, now you're speaking up for your little lover?" "Zane, I never realized before how disgusting you are." Tiffany's eyes were full of ridicule. "What, did I say something wrong? Are there any good women working here? Aren't they just selling their bodies for money?" She paused and then looked at April, mocking, "How much is he paying you?" "I'll give you double. Now serve him in the way you serve men, and perform for us." Slap. Zane slapped her. Tiffany was stunned, then lunged forward. "Zane Soulsby, you asshole! Who do you think you are to hit me?" Ginny held Tiffany back, her gaze coldly fixed on Zane. Zane looked at April, seeing her eyes slightly red, as if recalling painful memories. His heart ached, and he shouted at Tiffany, "Apologize." "What did you say?" Ginny looked at Zane in disbelief. "You want my best friend to apologize for this woman?" "Ginny, she's not like what Tiffany said, she..." "Enough!" Ginny completely lost her composure, no longer maintaining her usual indifference. Her eyes were filled with rage. "Zane Soulsby, Tiffany is right, why didn't I see you for who you really are before? You always said you loved me, but behind my back, you were with a hostess." "Zane, I don't blame you if you want to play around, but can't you think about me? You can't insult me like this. What did I ever do to deserve this from you? You hit my best friend for her, do you even count as a man?" As she spoke, Ginny turned her head to look at April. "Listen well, my name is Ginny King. You seduced my man, and tomorrow I will make sure you can't stay in Jay's City anymore. Ginny King. Zane's voice rose, if you have any issues, come at me, don't involve her. Ginny looked at Zane, her mouth opened slightly, and a look of weariness appeared in her eyes. Zane, I was wrong about you. To think you would speak to me this way for a hostess. It seems our marriage was a mistake from the start. Miss King, you misunderstood, Zane and I are high school classmates, Shut up, you slut. Ginny cursed, something she never imagined she would do. Clearly, her anger had consumed her rationality. Ginny, don't make yourself out to be so noble. There's nothing between April and me, I have a clear conscience. But can you swear there's nothing between you and William Mercer? Can you swear? Ginny looked at Zane in disappointment. Fine, so this is how you think of me. Ginny walked up to Zane and slapped him across the face. Zane Soulsby, we're done. Why did you hit him? April ran over, glaring angrily at Ginny. Ginny pushed her casually, causing April's head to hit the coffee table, with blood instantly flowing out. You. Zane raised his hand. You dare. Tiffany grabbed a beer bottle, looking like a furious lioness. Ginny raised her hand to stop Tiffany. Tears filled her eyes as she took a step towards Zane. Go ahead, hit me. Zane looked at Ginny's delicate face, realizing for the first time how unfamiliar she seemed. Go ahead, hit me. Ginny's tears fell as she took another step forward. Crazy woman. Zane looked at her with disappointment, then helped April up. Seeing this, Ginny let out a bitter laugh, turned around, and ran away without looking back. Tiffany smashed the beer bottle on the ground, glaring hatefully at Zane. You wait and see. Ginny, wait for me. Go after her. April, ignoring her own head wound, urged anxiously. Zane sighed, placed her on the sofa, and said softly, forget it, she and I were never meant to be. Are you okay? April bit her lip, pushed Zane away, and ran out. Zane was stunned for a moment, then downed a bottle of beer. Turning his head, he saw many waiters and hostesses standing outside the door. Zane's anger flared up, and he shouted, what are you staring at? Get out! Everyone shivered and quickly left, closing the door behind them. Ms. King. Ginny had just gotten into the car when she saw April running out. She stopped and looked coldly at April. What, are you here to show off? Then she closed the car door and told Tiffany to drive. April opened her mouth but in the end, said nothing. April, Mr. Soulsby is asleep from drinking too much. Jake ran out. April sighed and walked over. Zane was already asleep on the sofa, mumbling Ginny's name in his sleep. Her nose tingled, and she helped Zane out. She didn't know where Zane's home was, so after hesitating for a long time, she took him to a hotel across the street. Not far away, Ginny and Tiffany sat in the car. Ginny was crying non-stop. Tiffany cursed, scumbag. Ginny, I won't persuade you to reconcile with him anymore, divorce him. Ginny lowered her head and said softly, drive, let's go, he doesn't need my care anymore. The next day, Zane woke up rubbing his temples. After a while, he suddenly remembered what had happened at the KTV the previous night. He opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. You're awake. Mr. Six came to see you. April walked out of the bathroom. Seeing her, Zane's expression changed slightly. You, I, we? April's eyes flashed with sadness, but she quickly smiled. Don't worry, I left after bringing you here last night. I just got here this morning. Zane breathed a sigh of relief and said, thank you. No problem, we're classmates after all. April took out breakfast and placed it on the bedside table, smiling, eat breakfast before you go down. Okay. Zane picked up a bun, reminiscing about what had happened yesterday, a bitter taste lingering in his mouth. After finishing breakfast, Zane greeted April and headed downstairs. As soon as Zane left, April took out her phone and dialed a number. Before long, Tiffany's voice came from the other end. Hello, who is this? This is April Salazar. Tiffany was about to hang up when April's voice came through again. Do you have some time? I'd like to talk to you. You must have the wrong person. April pursed her lips and said, you probably don't want me to contact Ms. King, do you? There was a moment of silence from Tiffany, then she asked, where did you get my number? I found it on Zane's phone. 10 o'clock, at the Wilson Cafe on C Road. Thank you. April hung up the phone and walked out the door. Where is Mr. Bear? In the dining room, Ginny's eyes were red and puffy, with dark circles under them, as if she hadn't slept all night. William Mercer didn't answer but smiled as he picked at his food. Ginny grew impatient. Where is Mr. Bear? Mr. Bear is on his way. Don't be anxious, have a drink first. Ginny ignored the drink William pushed toward her and instead took out her phone to issue commands to her assistant remotely. Seeing this, William remained patient, quietly watching Ginny's beautiful face. The thought of what was about to happen made his heart race. Before long, a man in a suit walked in. He looked to be in his 40s but was well maintained. He had a robust build and sharp eyes. Two burly men with fierce looks followed behind him, clearly not to be trifled with. Miss King, sorry to keep you waiting. Wadsworth Bear sat down and spoke calmly. Ginny replied, I haven't been here long. Wadsworth snapped his fingers, and a waiter came over and took his order for a bottle of red wine. William hurriedly picked it up and poured a glass for each of the three. Wadsworth swirled his wineglass, smiling, Miss King's reputation precedes you. I've always wanted to meet you, but someone of your stature is hard to approach, even if I had the intention. Ginny detected the sarcasm in his words. She picked up her glass and said softly, Mr. Bear, you're too humorous. In J City, your name is the one that echoes everywhere. I've always wanted to make your acquaintance, but I've been too busy with company matters to find the time. How about this? I'll finish this glass as an apology, okay? With that, Ginny downed her glass of red wine in one go. Wadsworth clapped. I didn't expect Miss King to be such a heroine. Though I'm just a rough man, I truly admire Miss King. Let's have a drink and let bygones be bygones, shall we? Ginny was delighted. She hadn't expected Wadsworth to be so agreeable. She quickly agreed. Pouring another glass, she smiled at Wadsworth before drinking it down. After 2 glasses, Ginny's face turned slightly red. Mr. Bear, we're friends now, right? Wadsworth's lips turned up in a smile, of course. Then could I trouble Mr. Bear with a favor? Wadsworth lit a cigar, smiling, I'd be happy to help with anything for Ms. King. Ginny, trying to contain her excitement, said, It's like this, our company has a downstream factory. But recently, some people have been intimidating the factory workers, making them too scared to go to work. Could Mr. Bear perhaps say a few words to stop them from bothering my employees? Wadsworth frowned. I've heard about this. Apparently, those people have some background. While I do have some influence in J City, they might not listen to me. Pausing, he smiled, but don't worry, Ms. King. Although I don't know their motives, everyone in this world is driven by profit. If Ms. King is willing to part with some money, I guarantee they won't just leave your employees alone but might even protect them. Ginny understood he was here to extort money. Though she felt disgusted, she also knew that Wadsworth and his kind were shameless scoundrels who wouldn't act without a bribe. Ginny pondered for a moment and asked, How much would that be? Wadsworth held up 5 fingers, smiling, Not much, 50 million. For a company like yours, that's just pocket change. Ginny almost choked. The company was already short by nearly 200 million. 50 million was no small amount. Wadsworth chuckled, For 50 million, those people will not only leave but will also protect your employees. Think about it, Ms. King, you'd be benefiting. Ginny looked at him, realizing he had made up his mind. This 50 million was essentially a protection fee for Wadsworth. This money had to be spent. Ginny showed her determination without any hesitation. All right, 50 million it is. Wadsworth gave a thumbs up, as expected of Miss King, truly domineering. With that, he poured another glass of wine. To our cooperation, cheers. Ginny was about to drink when she suddenly felt dizzy. The people in front of her became increasingly blurred, and a wave of intense heat swept over her. Her whole body weakened, and a strange emotion surged in her heart. Seeing this, Wadsworth cautiously asked, Ms. King, have you had too much to drink? If so, Mr. Mercer, could you help take Ms. King back? After speaking, Wadsworth turned and left. William responded and quickly sat next to Ginny, his hand wrapping around her waist. Ginny, you've had too much to drink. I'll take you back. Ginny still had her wits about her. Her current state didn't feel like she was drunk, it felt more like she had been drugged. In an instant, she understood what was happening. William had told Wadsworth about the factory issues, and they had collaborated. This way, Wadsworth got the money, and he took the opportunity to get her drunk and drugged her. William Mercer, you are so insidious. Ginny gritted her teeth. William, knowing she had seen through everything, no longer pretended and sneered. Who told you to be with that useless man? Even treating you to a meal was wishful thinking for me. Now, you've lost 50 million, and I got you. As he spoke, he helped Ginny up. Don't touch me. Ginny used all her strength to push him, but she was too weak, and it looked more like a couple playfully teasing each other. William, looking at Ginny, breathed heavily. He helped her out of the restaurant and stuffed her into the car. Ginny panicked and wanted to call Zane, but she had no strength left and could only watch as William took her away. In the hotel lobby, Mr. Six was sitting on the sofa, chatting with two attendants. Mr. Six saw Zane coming down and stood up. Mr. Soulsby? Mr. Six, you were looking for me? Mr. Six nodded, and the two walked out side by side. The former lowered his voice and said, "A black notice has been issued. Wadsworth Bear spent 10 million to buy your life." A black notice? Zane was a bit surprised. Yes, it's underworld slang. A black notice is like a bounty. Zane nodded and said, I understand. Have you tracked the whereabouts of Wadsworth Bear's family? Mr. Six smiled wryly. It's really hard to track. It's not that I'm incompetent, but people like us in the underworld protect our families very well. Zane acknowledged and didn't mind too much. Suddenly, Mr. Six's phone rang. Mr. Six glanced at it and frowned. What's the matter? Mr. Six, Ms. King seems to have been drugged and was taken away by William Mercer. Keep an eye on them. Mr. Soulsby and I are coming over right now. Yes. Zane looked at Mr. Six in confusion. What's going on? Mr. Six said, Ms. King has been drugged and taken away. Zane's face changed dramatically, and he asked urgently, which direction did they go? Mr. Soulsby, don't worry. Ms. King has my men by her side, no one will harm her. We are heading there now. All right. Although Zane said this, his body was trembling slightly. He didn't want another incident like April's to happen again. Got news, they're at the Noble Hotel. Mr. Six said. Zane shuddered and floored the gas pedal. The Noble Hotel was in the northern part of the city, Wadsworth Bear's territory. And it was noon now, with many cars on the road. It would take at least 20 minutes to reach the Noble Hotel. Zane was anxious, flooring the gas pedal, running red lights all the way. Mr. Six watched in shock, gripping the handle tightly. In the presidential suite on the top floor of the Noble Hotel, William threw Ginny onto the bed, frantically tearing at her clothes. Ginny still had some clarity, tears streaming down her face. Ginny, don't blame me. It's because I love you too much. But don't worry, after today, you'll divorce that useless man and marry me. I won't mind that you've been married before and will treat you well. William, if you dare touch me, I'll call the police and have you arrested. William sneered coldly, doesn't matter, I love you too much. As he spoke, he took out a video camera and placed it to the side, aiming it at Ginny. Seeing this, Ginny's face turned pale, understanding what he was planning to do. He wanted to record a video and use it to threaten her. Despair. Regret surged in her heart. If she hadn't argued with Zane, he would definitely have been with her. If he were with her, he wouldn't have let her get into danger. But, it's all ifs. Ginny closed her eyes, losing more and more clarity. Seeing this, William laughed maniacally. Not long after, Ginny's clothes were torn to shreds by her, leaving only her underwear. He gazed at Ginny's fair body, a flash of desire in his eyes. He took off his shirt and was about to pounce when there was a knock on the door. William walked over, opened the door, and glared at the waiter outside, gritting his teeth. I don't need anything, get lost. The waiter seemed startled and quickly retreated. William closed the door and walked towards Ginny on the bed. Just as he reached the foot of the bed, there was another knock on the door. Damn it! William cursed and quickly walked over to open the door. The waiter outside timidly asked, Sir, do you need room service? William grabbed his collar and gritted his teeth, saying, I don't need anything. If you dare to disturb me again, I'll kill you. After saying that, he pushed the waiter forcefully. The waiter took 2 steps back, glanced inside, and a look of urgency flashed in his eyes. Sir, please order some lunch. If you don't, my boss will scold me. Smack. William slapped him hard. Get lost. After saying that, William closed the door. Just as he was about to head towards the bed, there was another knock on the door. William cursed under his breath and opened the door. As soon as he did, he started cursing. Damn it, can't you understand human language? Just as he finished cursing, he kicked the person hard in the chest. William groaned and his body flew backward, crashing heavily into the wall before rebounding to the ground. The visitor was Zane. Zane glanced at Ginny on the bed, seeing that she was still in her underwear and moaning. He breathed a sigh of relief, but his eyes reddened. He picked up the table lamp by the TV and quickly walked over. William came to his senses and saw Zane approaching. He shouted loudly, "Zane Soulsby, if you dare to touch me, do you believe that?" Bang! The table lamp smashed hard on his head. Once, twice, 3 times. Soon, William was lying on the ground, his face covered in blood and terror as he looked at Zane. He could feel the killing intent emanating from Zane. He now genuinely believed Zane would kill him. "Please, stop hitting me, spare me," William begged, completely lacking the courage to fight back. Zane stomped on his knee, and with a crack, his knee shattered, breaking his leg. Without another word, Zane delivered 3 more kicks, breaking all 4 of his limbs. Seeing that Zane really intended to kill William, Mr. Six hurried in and grabbed Zane, saying, "Mr. Soulsby, many people saw him bring Ms. King in here. If you kill him now, you won't be able to get away with it. Let him go for now and deal with him later." Hearing this, Zane regained his senses. "Throw him out." Mr. Six breathed a sigh of relief and nodded to the waiter behind him. The waiter came in, picked up William, and started carrying him out. "Wait," the waiter stopped and turned his head, asking, "Mr. Soulsby, any instructions?" "What's your name?" "Mr. Soulsby, my name is Zion Hall, but you can call me Zion." Zane nodded and said, "I owe you a favor." Upon hearing this, Mr. Six smiled and said, "You're a good kid, let's go." Zion answered affirmatively, a smile appearing on his face. "I'll head out too. I'll wait for you downstairs," Mr. Six said and then turned to leave. Zane responded with a hum, closed the door, and walked to the bedside. However, as soon as he approached, Ginny clung to him, her soft arms wrapping around his arm, her soft lips kissing him. Zane was momentarily stunned. He hadn't intended to take advantage of her, but the softness and sweetness of her lips were hard to resist. His rationality was slowly slipping away. He responded by holding Ginny, turning from passive to active. In the next moment, a painful groan echoed in the room, followed by sounds of pleasure accompanied by heavy breathing. The room was filled with the warmth of spring. In the afternoon, Ginny's eyelids fluttered, and then she frowned, opening her eyes. She looked at the ceiling, seemingly remembering something, and hurriedly sat up. She opened the blanket and saw the red spot on the bed, her face turning pale as tears began to flow uncontrollably. "You're awake!" Zane's voice came, holding a bowl of instant noodles. "Why are you here?" Upon seeing him, Ginny was momentarily stunned, then a hint of joy flashed in her eyes as if she remembered something. Zane sat down, looking at her swollen eyes with immense guilt. Thinking about what happened last night, she was right, he felt guilty about April Salazar, but she hadn't done anything wrong. And he, last night, almost harmed her. "I'm sorry." Zane apologized. Ginny's face turned pale. "Was it not him?" "Zane, Ginny couldn't speak, her eyes filled with pain. "Did she not give her virgin to Zane? Let's not argue anymore, okay?" Zane said. Ginny sniffled, as if she had made some kind of decision, and suddenly lifted the blanket, pointing to a red mark on the bed. "I'm sorry, I was drugged." Zane was startled for a moment, then seemed to understand something. He pulled her into his arms and said softly, "I know, I came in time." "He didn't touch you." Ginny suddenly raised her head, looking at Zane with surprise. "So that means—" "It was me." Ginny smiled, but soon, as if she had thought of something, she pushed Zane away and her voice turned cold. "Why did you come to save me? Why don't you go to your hostess?" Zane ignored her struggle and pulled her back into his arms, saying softly, "Ginny, she was my high school classmate. During my poorest days, she didn't look down on me and even gave me pickles." Then, Zane told her about his past with April. But he kept quiet about Zach Bear sending people to assault April. That was April's shame, and he wouldn't use it to resolve the misunderstanding between them. Ginny frowned and said, "So, she's also a pitiful person, with a gambling father and a sick mother. But, Zane, if you keep doing this, won't she be grateful to you and cling to you?" As she spoke, she stared straight at Zane. Zane shook his head. It would be enough if she didn't hate him, how could she possibly cling to him? But you wanted to hit me that day. Zane opened his mouth but didn't know how to explain. Alright, I get it. I think we need to take a break, otherwise, April will always be a thorn between us. With that, Ginny got up and dressed. Suddenly, her phone rang. Ginny took out her phone and saw that it was Tiffany calling. After hesitating for a moment, Ginny took her phone and walked into the bathroom. Answering the call, Tiffany, what's up? April Salazar came to see me during the day. Ginny frowned and asked, what did she want? She told me her story. Ginny said, I already know. As long as you know. What are you planning to do next? Forgive her or? Tiffany asked. Ginny sighed and said, April might have been a ray of light in his dark youth, but that's all in the past. If he still can't see clearly, even if I love him, I will divorce him. Alright, no matter what, I support you. Tiffany replied. The two chatted for a while before Ginny hung up the phone and threw her bag at Zane. Let's go. Zane caught it and followed her out. Just as they stepped out of the hotel door, police cars pulled up. The car doors opened, and two officers stepped out, showing their badges to Zane. Hello, someone reported you for deliberately injuring another person. Please come with us. Ginny had been preoccupied with her thoughts about her situation with Zane. Seeing the scene unfold, she immediately grew anxious. Officer, there must be some misunderstanding here. The sturdier police officer snorted and pulled out his phone, showing a picture of William in the hospital with an 4 drip, to Ginny. His limbs are broken, and he has a skull fracture. If not for the timely medical intervention, this wouldn't be a case of intentional injury but intentional murder. Ginny's face turned pale. She understood the strength of the Mercer family. If they were determined to imprison Zane, he might never get out. Officer, he drugged me and tried to assault me. My husband came just in time to save me, and that's why he hit him. You can't wrong an innocent man. We're still investigating the matter. Don't worry, we won't wrong an innocent person, but we also won't let a criminal go. As he spoke, the other officer came over and handcuffed Zane. Zane didn't resist and said to Ginny, It's okay, don't worry. Ginny watched the police car drive away, her face ashen and devoid of color. She shakily took out her phone and called Tiffany. Tiffany, where are you? I need to see you. Hearing Ginny's tearful voice, Tiffany quickly said, I'm at home, come over right away. Ginny took a cab to Tiffany's house. Seeing Ginny's red, swollen eyes still brimming with tears, Tiffany was furious. Did Zane bully you again? No, Tiffany, Zane was taken away by the police. What? What happened? Tiffany exclaimed in shock. Ginny recounted everything that had happened that day. The more Tiffany listened, the darker her expression became. Finally, she was so angry that she punched the coffee table. That William Mercer, how did we not see that he was this kind of person before? Ginny said, I don't care what kind of person he is. I just want Zane. You need to think of something to keep him out of prison. Tiffany sighed and said, even if we sue now, at most William will be charged with attempted rape, but there's evidence of Zane hitting him. The most crucial point is that with William's current injuries, it could be classified as second-degree harm. How many years could he be sentenced? Normally, it's between 3 to 10 years. If I step in, even with the Mercer family's influence, it would be at most 6 years. Upon hearing this, Ginny swayed and almost lost her balance. Tiffany bit her lower lip and said, Don't worry, I'll call my teacher to see if we can find a way to reduce the sentence. Okay, Tiffany, please find your teacher. Tiffany nodded. Right now, Ginny was no longer the strong woman she used to be but a helpless, lost girl. Name: Zane Soulsby. Gender: male. Age: 26. Why did you hit him? In the dimly lit interrogation room, 2 police officers stood in front of him. One of them, an older officer, asked coldly. The officer beside him looked like he had just graduated from the police academy. He drugged my wife. If I hadn't arrived at the scene in time, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Zane replied. The officer asked coldly, but nothing actually happened, right? And since you knew your wife was drugged, why didn't you call the police? Do you know what kind of impact your actions can have on society? Zane said, Officer, let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Bang! The officer slammed the table and shouted, "I'm asking you, not the other way around. Tell me, why did you hit him? I already told you, he drugged my wife. I hit him to save her. It's considered self-defense." Self-defense? The officer sneered. "Do you have evidence that it was self-defense?" Zane was furious. He realized now that this officer was siding with William. He decided to shut up. No matter what, the incident had already happened, and he believed Ginny would definitely find the best lawyer in the industry for him. Whatever the final judgment would be, he would accept it. As for hitting the man, Zane had no regrets. In fact, he felt he hadn't hit him hard enough. At the very least, he should have beaten him until he was unconscious for life. The officer asked a few more questions, but seeing Zane's unyielding attitude, he angrily slammed the table again. But Zane wasn't afraid of him at all. If he wanted to, the handcuffs on his wrists would melt instantly. No one in this world could hold him. But he didn't want to do that. He chose to follow the normal legal procedures. After a day, Zane just sat on the chair with his eyes closed, not answering any of the officer's questions. Soon, he fell asleep. Images appeared before his eyes again, clearer and with more details this time. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he felt someone patting him. When he opened his eyes, a young man was standing in front of him. He looked very ordinary, with dark skin, but his eyes were bright and piercing. "Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Thor Woods." Zane's eyes narrowed slightly. He felt a very special aura from Thor Woods. This aura wasn't very strong, not even comparable to one of his fingers. But it made Zane understand that he wasn't an ordinary person. When he discovered he could control flames, he knew that the world wasn't as simple as it seemed. There must be many people like him. "I'm Zane Soulsby." Thor revealed a slight smile and said, "I know." Zane didn't speak, waiting for him to continue. Thor also remained silent, and the two just stared at each other. After about half an hour, Thor spoke first. "Aren't you curious why I'm looking for you? You'll tell me yourself." Thor grinned and said, "Let me introduce myself. My name is Thor Woods, leader of the Dragon Squad." "Dragon Squad?" Zane looked at Thor curiously. "What's that?" "It's a department that manages supernatural events." Zane didn't speak, quietly watching Thor. Thor said helplessly, "You're really no fun, not asking anything." "Fine, I'll explain." Zane nodded. From his words, Zane learned that the world was just as he thought, not full of ordinary people. There were many people in this world with supernatural abilities. For example, ancient martial artists passed down from ancient times. People born with the ability to control fire, water, or even see through things. These people were called metahuman. Besides here, there were many supernatural beings abroad as well. In short, all the legends were real, just not as powerful as the legends described. And the Dragon Squad was an official department directly under the state. The Dragon Squad had great power. When the Dragon Squad handled matters, even the National Security Bureau and the political department had to step aside and, if necessary, cooperate unconditionally. The Dragon Squad's responsibility was to maintain peace in the ordinary world. So, except for the top state leaders, no one could issue any orders to Dragon Squad members. Thor spoke in one breath, looking at Zane with pride, but soon, he was disappointed. Zane's face remained expressionless, not showing the shock Thor expected. Zane took a deep breath and said, "So, are you here to invite me to join you or to kill me?" Thor fell silent. After a moment, he looked up and said through gritted teeth, "You're really boring." Zane shrugged. "We discovered a supernatural aura in that abandoned building in the northern suburbs, and the aura reached an astonishing A level. So, we started investigating and finally traced it back to you. Although we're not sure what happened there, before you went, there were over 50 people, but after you left, those 50 people vanished into thin air. I guess you did it, right?" Zane's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, "What level is A?" Thor replied, "Very strong. Let me put it this way, we classify levels as S, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, with S being the strongest and G the weakest. Above S, there's SS, and above SS, there's SSS. Got it?" Zane nodded. He didn't expect himself to be so strong. An A level. Moreover, he hadn't even used his full strength at the time. So, his true strength was above A? Could he possibly be at S level? What do you mean? Thor took out a certificate from his pocket and handed it over, the Dragon Squad sincerely invites you to join. Zane's mind stirred, and flames appeared on his wrist. The handcuffs instantly melted. Seeing this, Thor's eyes showed a hint of caution. This aura surpassed A-level. This guy was even stronger than he had imagined. Zane carefully examined the certificate, which had his photo on it. Clearly, they had wanted to invite him for a long time but hadn't found the right opportunity. Now that he was detained, they thought their chance had come. If he joined, with the Dragon Squad's capabilities, getting him out would be a piece of cake. Zane looked at it for a moment, then handed the certificate back, saying, "The rank is too low, not interested." Thor frowned and said, "Although it's just a Dragon Squad membership, with your strength, we wouldn't ask you to do much. Only when there's a real problem would we need you. So, the rank is just a formality, nothing to worry about." He paused and continued, "With your strength, if you're not under government control, they won't feel secure. So, I suggest you join." Zane raised an eyebrow and, after a moment of silence, said, "I can join, but I hope you keep your word. Don't bother me unless it's something really troublesome." Thor breathed a sigh of relief and extended his hand to Zane. "Welcome to the Dragon Squad." Zane shook his hand. Inside the villa, Tiffany had just walked in when Ginny eagerly asked, "How did it go?" "What did your teacher say?" Tiffany rubbed her temples and said helplessly, "My teacher said that if it were an ordinary family, she could reduce the sentence to 2 years with a 3-year probation. But it's the Mercer family, so it's very difficult." Ginny's face changed slightly, and she sat back down. Tiffany looked at her hesitantly. "Tiffany, just say what you want to say. There's one person who can get Zane out." "Who?" "Faith Heron, the chairwoman of the Heron Group." Ginny's face turned ugly. She had never disliked anyone as much as William Mercer and Faith Heron. Especially Faith Heron, whom she hated even more. To others, she was always proud and confident. But in front of Faith Heron, she couldn't be proud. She always felt that Faith had bad intentions toward Zane, always trying to take him away from her. "I'll go ask Grandma," Ginny said firmly. Tiffany sighed and said, "With your grandma's personality, as soon as you ask, she'll probably take all your 31% shares." Ginny stubbornly said, "Even so, I won't ask Faith Heron." Knowing Ginny's personality, Tiffany knew that once she made up her mind, nothing could change it. She thought about it and decided not to persuade her. Ginny stood up, grabbed her bag, and left. At Heron Group, Faith was sitting in her office chair, on the phone. After a moment, she put down the phone. "This time, you owe me a favor." Faith dialed another number, and a doting voice came from the other end. "Faith, what made you call me?" Faith said coyly, "Uncle, I miss you." "Come on, you little rascal, you never call unless you need something." "What is it this time?" Faith giggled and said, "Uncle, it's like this. A friend of mine was jailed for fighting, and I want you to help get him out." "Friend? Male or female?" "Male." Laughter came from the other end of the phone. "Uncle, why are you laughing?" Faith playfully scolded. "My dear little Faith is finally love-struck." "Uncle." Faith dragged out her words, acting coy. "All right, I won't tease you anymore. Tell me, what's his name and where is he being held?" "His name is Zane Soulsby, and he's in J City." "Okay, go get him now." "Thank you, Uncle. When you come to J City, I'll treat you to a meal." "Sure, just don't back out on your promise." "I definitely won't." Hanging up the phone, Faith's lips curved into a slight smile. She quickly tidied up and drove to the police station. King Family Estate. The old lady looked at Ginny for a long time before speaking. "I can intervene, but give me 20% of the shares, leaving you with 11%. Ginny readily agreed, "Sure, no problem." With that, she swiftly signed the contract. The old lady gave Ginny a long look and said, "You can go get him now." "Thank you, Grandma." Ginny's face lit up with joy as she hurriedly drove to the police station. Police station. Zane was handcuffed again. Thor had already left because he received word that Zane could be released without his intervention. In the dimly lit waiting room, Zane was very interested in the world Thor spoke of, but first, he needed to get out of here. However, Thor was moving too slowly. No one knew how much time had passed, and still, no one had come to release him. Just as Zane was getting bored, the door suddenly opened, and a portly middle-aged man walked in. He enthusiastically unlocked Zane's handcuffs and said with a smile, Mr. Soulsby, this is really a case of a flood washes away the Dragon King's temple. Family doesn't recognize family. And you are? I'm the deputy director of the police station. My name is Xander Bird. He smiled ingratiatingly. Zane was surprised for a second but quickly regained his composure. He said indifferently, Director Bird, you're too kind. Oh, don't mention it. We were all deceived by the Mercer family. William Mercer drugged your wife intending to assault her. It's outrageous. Fortunately, you arrived in time to prevent a disaster. Otherwise, we would all be uneasy. But Mr. Soulsby, don't worry. Such a villain will surely be brought to justice. As for you, you were protecting your wife, which is justified self-defense. You just need to sign a paper, and you can leave any time. Zane looked at him, surprised at the influence Thor had. Even a deputy director came out to personally apologize. Zane politely exchanged a few words and followed Director Bird to sign the release papers. Then, under Director Bird's watchful eyes, he walked out of the police station. Just as Zane was about to call Thor to thank him, a Maybach pulled up beside him. The window rolled down, revealing Faith's delicate face. Zane, did they give you a hard time in there? Faith? Zane was surprised to see her. Faith smiled and said, yeah, surprised? To be honest, a little. Zane nodded. Faith's lips curved up, and she said with a grin, no need for thanks, just treat me to a meal. Zane was taken aback. Faith raised an eyebrow, what? I got you out, and you can't even buy me a meal? Zane was speechless. So it wasn't Thor who intervened, but Faith. As she said, she had helped him so much, it would be unreasonable not to treat her to a meal. Zane readily got into the car. Where to? Anywhere you want. All right, then I'll pick a place. I'll eat you into bankruptcy. Faith said fiercely. Zane chuckled and said nothing. As the car drove off, neither of them noticed Ginny standing not far away, holding a phone, looking dejected. Ms. King, what's wrong? Speak up. Who do you want me to get out? Don't worry, as long as your grandmother has spoken, unless it's murder or drug trafficking, I guarantee to get him out. Ginny took a deep breath, her nose tingling. She said softly, thank you, but it's no longer necessary. Huh? No longer necessary? All right then. Ginny hung up the phone, gripping it so tightly that her knuckles turned white. After a while, she shook her head with a bitter smile. He'd rather call Faith for help than ask her. Did he really look down on her that much? She didn't know how she got home, nor did she know what she was thinking. She sat curled up on the sofa, her eyes vacant and her mind blank. After having dinner with Faith, Zane returned home and immediately saw Ginny curled up on the sofa. He was momentarily stunned, feeling that her current state seemed somewhat familiar. Zane walked over and was about to hug Ginny when she seemed to dodge away, staring straight at him. We need to talk, she said. Zane smiled. Sure, what do you want to talk about? Ginny asked, how did you get out? Faith found someone to get me out, Zane answered truthfully. A trace of disappointment flashed in Ginny's eyes. Why did you choose to ask her instead of me? Is it because you don't believe I have the ability? Or do you think the Heron Group is more useful than me? Zane frowned, not understanding why Ginny was saying such things. Shouldn't she be happy that he was out? Zane, I've told you not to get too close to Faith. Why didn't you listen? Or is Faith more important to you than I am? Zane sighed, sensing Ginny's jealousy. It's not that. She offered. Ginny interrupted him softly, I know everything. You married me and can't go out to work, only staying home to take care of me. That's not fair to you. But Zane, do you know, as long as you want to work any position in the King Group, just say the word, and I will give it to you. But you haven't asked. You want to connect with Faith because she's more capable than I am, right? Ginny, you misunderstand, Ginny interrupted him again, I've thought a lot while you were away. Maybe our marriage was a mistake from the beginning. Ginny, you. Zane looked at Ginny in disbelief. Her eyes were slightly red. I know you haven't betrayed me yet, but what about over time? A woman like Faith, beautiful and wealthy, if she wholeheartedly pursues you, will you remain as steadfast as you are now? Not to mention Faith, even your idealized lover April Salazar, you were willing to hurt me for her. This shows that I am important to you, but not as much as she is. In the future, if both April and I were in trouble, I believe you would choose her without hesitation. Tears fell from Ginny's eyes as she looked up. I think we should divorce. It would be better for both of us. Ginny, you misunderstand. Ginny stood up, ready to leave. Zane grabbed her wrist anxiously. I have nothing with April, you have to believe me. Ginny said, I can believe you, but you have to promise me one thing. What? Tell me. Zane said urgently. Stay away from Faith and April, never contact them again. Ginny said seriously. Zane was stunned. Staying away from Faith was easy. He didn't want to get entangled with her anyway, but he couldn't do the same with April. Because of Zach Bear's revenge, April had experienced such things. Ginny gave a bitter smile, shook off Zane's hand, and left quickly. No matter how Zane called, she did not respond. Not until the car's taillights completely disappeared. Zane sat down dejectedly. He loved Ginny and could do anything for her, but he couldn't agree to the matter involving April. After a while, Zane's eyes became determined. He needed to show Ginny through actions that he loved her. He would stand firmly by her side. At this moment, Mr. Six called. When the call connected, Mr. Six's voice came through. Mr. Soulsby, we've found out that it's Wadsworth's people harassing Ms. King's factory. Can you send your people over to solve this problem? No problem. Zane thanked him and said, I won't get involved in this matter. You talk to Ginny. All right. Just as he was about to hang up, a sense of danger made Zane's hair stand on end. He instinctively wanted to dive to the side. Bang! A dull sound suddenly rang out. He glanced back and saw a basketball-sized hole in the sofa. Sniper! Zane's face changed slightly. He quickly hid behind the wall, pondering where the sniper could be. He couldn't go out and find the person himself. As this thought appeared, he suddenly realized that everything around him appeared in his mind. A gleam of light flashed in Zane's eyes. Divine consciousness. In his divine consciousness, he saw a man lying on a high building 1,000 meters away, looking through a scope. Zane put away his phone and ran out through the back door. Then he ran to the opposite high building as fast as he could. He arrived at the rooftop and saw the man. Hey! Zane called out softly. The man's body stiffened and he turned his head instinctively. When he saw Zane, his mouth dropped open. His hands suddenly reached behind his back, but before he could complete the motion, Zane appeared in front of him, gripping his neck tightly. A sense of suffocation swept over him, his whole body rigid. Zane took out the man's pistol. Buddy, is this what you were looking for? Fear flashed in the man's eyes. How did you do that? Zane didn't answer his question. Instead, he said, tell me, who is your employer? The man seemed to calm down and said, as an assassin, protecting the employer's information is the first lesson. Do you think I will tell you? Zane nodded, taking a pouch of needles from his jacket pocket. Inside were all brand new silver needles. He had bought them on his way home after having dinner with Faith. As time passed, the details in his dreams became more vivid. He had memorized the method of using these silver needles from his dreams. Picking up a silver needle, he gently pricked the area between the man's index and middle fingers. The man's face twitched, and in the next moment, it turned deathly pale. His eyes filled with pain. Then, a painful howl erupted. Ah! Zane frowned, then picked up another silver needle and pierced it into the man's throat. The scream stopped abruptly. However, his whole body continued to tremble with pain. It was excruciating. It felt as if billions of ants were gnawing at his bone marrow. His mind was in a daze. After about a minute, Zane pulled out the silver needle and said softly, tell me your employer. The man looked at Zane in horror, as if he were staring at a demon from hell. The next moment, when he saw Zane approach with another silver needle, he shouted urgently, it's William Mercer. He sent me to kill you. Zane was somewhat surprised. He had thought it was Wadsworth Bear, but it turned out to be William. I see. Zane flicked his fingers, and a black flame fell onto the man. The man didn't even have time to scream before he turned into ashes. A gust of wind blew, leaving nothing behind.